Hello, so welcome to Code Snippet. So in this video, we are going to create a book application by using Spring Boot, and we are going to perform a CRUD operations on that. So we will be writing 4 APIs. So let's first go through the agenda of what all things we are going to do here. So let me pull this here. So if you can see, we are going to create a Spring Boot application. So we will first create a Spring Boot project. We will create a book entity and we will perform CRUD operations. So as we know, CRUD operations are create, read, update and delete, right? And we will test all these APIs by using Postman, and we will actually make use of H2 database to store this book entity, right? One more point I believe I forgot to add, that we are going to use Spring Data JPA, right? So it is going to be fun. So sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Let's first see how we can create a Spring Boot project. So there are two ways to create it, right? You can directly create it by using your IDE. So I personally use IntelliJ. However, you will need a license to create it from there. So second option is, it's an easy way. Just go to start.spring.io and you will see such UI, right? And what you can do is you can select your build tool. I will select Maven here. Language, you can select Java. So as we are going to create a Java project, and change the name of the application. Give here book application, let's say, as we are going to create a book application, and I'll select Java 17 for now. And from here you can add dependencies, right? For example, Spring Web and Spring Data JPA, as we discussed, we are going to use that. After that, as we discussed, we are going to add a H2 database. And after that, we will also have, let's add Lombok as well, because this will reduce a boilerplate code for us. And after adding your dependencies, just click on generate. So this will just download a zip file for us. Let me pull the Explorer. So as you can see, it's a zip file, right? So what you need to do, you need to extract it first, right? So once it is extracted, let's go to our IntelliJ now. So here in the IntelliJ, just click on file, say open. Inside documents, go to your application and select your POM file, right? And open it. Select open as project. We will open it in same window. And as you can see, our project is open. So if you see, go in main class, you will see our book application here. So as you can see, this is at the Spring Boot application. One more thing to check here is your POM file. So if you see here, we have all the dependencies added which we have selected while generating the project, right? H2, Spring Boot starter web. Now we have everything that we need in place. Now one more thing I would like to highlight here is your application.properties, where all the properties which we are going to configure inside your application, you can add it here. So for example, you can set your ports, right? You can just say server.port and set the port. By default it is 8080, so we'll keep that only here. So we don't need to write much code over here. So what we will do, so let's first create our packages. Okay, so what we will do, we will just create a new package here, because we want that kind of segregation inside our project, right? We'll put all the controller at one place. So let's create a controller package for that. There we go, one package is done. Let's create another package for service. So all the services we will add here. Let's create another package for repository layer, and we'll create one more for entities that we are going to add, right? So entity. So let's first add our book class. So let's just create a new class and mark it as book, and let's add few elements inside book. We will first say ID of the book, then we will have string title of the book, and we will have, let's say, author of the book, and one more we can add is genre of the book, right? So this is how our book entity is going to look like. Now in order to convert it to an entity, we will need to add some annotations. What we will do, we will say entity, we will add few Lombok annotations. So data I will add, so this will give us both getters and setters. I will add no argument constructor. I will add all argument constructor as well, right? Now as we have converted this to an entity, as you can see, IntelliJ is giving us some kind of error. It's saying we need a ID. Okay, so we need to add a ID attribute, and we need to mark it by using @ID, right? So this annotation we need to use. Instead of using this primitive, let's use the wrapper class. So integer I will add here, and we can also use one more generated value annotation here, so that Spring JPA will automatically add this value and automatically increment it, right? We don't need to handle it explicitly, right? So this is how our entity class is looking, right? Now let's go ahead and add one controller. Okay, so let's go to here and let's say new controller. We will name it as book controller, and let's add REST controller annotation. So REST controller is basically response body plus your controller annotation. So this will create a REST controller for us. So let's first add a API to add a book inside our database. So let's add a function. So add book. So as this is going to be a post API, we will add post mapping over here, and we will name this API as, let's say, add book, right? So this API will add a book for us, and let's give some generic API and request mapping. So here we also can handle versioning. So we'll say book and /v1, let's say /book /v1, right? So your API will go like /book /v1 /add book in order to add a book, right? So we need to add request body annotation here because we are going to pass a JSON to your application and it will be converted to your entity automatically, right? Now what we need to do here, first thing is we need to create a service over here. So what we will do, let's say we have a book service. So here I will add a book service which I'm going to create now, and I will say book service, and let's just create a new class in service package, call it as book service. Let's mark it service. So all the business logic we are going to add here, so that's why we are marking it as a service. Now let's go back to our controller and let's just import this. Let's make it private final. Once we make it final, we need to initialize it in a constructor. Let's add a constructor and we will just auto wire it over here. What auto wire will do, it will inject the dependency. The book service dependency will be injected in the book controller class, right? So that is dependency injection in Java Spring Boot, right? Now we have book service with us. We have it auto wired. We will just say book service dot add book. So this function will add a book inside a database. We'll just pass a book to it, which is coming from the request, and this function we are yet to implement. So let's create a method inside book service. That this will do it for us. So we are at service layer. So what we need to do is, this book we have in the service layer, we need to pass it to repository layer and we need to put it into database, right? So in order to do that, we need to create a repository class for us. So let's create a new, let's say, book repository. We'll create an interface basically, and we will extend this with JPA repository. And JPA repository basically will take two arguments. First will be the entity you want to add, and another will be the ID of it. So ID here we had integer, right? So let's replace that with integer. Go back here and let's add integer over here. So that's it. This will do the job for us. This will create a repository. So JPA will handle everything. We don't have to add any single line of code over here to add your entity inside database. This will do the job for us. Now let's go back to our service. So let's create an instance of book repository, and we can just auto wire here. So this is a field injection. So in the controller we saw constructor injection. This is a field injection. Directly on top of a field you can add auto wire, and this will also do the job for you. So just wanted to show both the type of auto wiring, and here we saw was, and this was the constructor auto wiring or constructor injection we call it as. So both the types we have seen, and what we will do here, we will just say book repository dot save, and that's it. This will save the book for us, right? So this function will return us the book which it just saved, so which we can just return to our controller. So we can update the return type as book, and let's just return it from here only, and that's it. So this is our save method inside our service, right? Now let's go back to controller. So let's introduce a book variable and let's say saved book. So a response entity type we will keep as book. So we will return a book object into the response, and we will just say return response entity dot OK and saved book, right? This is a simple API that we have added, and this should do the job for us. This will actually go inside your DB and save the book, right? Now let's try to bring up our application and see if it is working. So I just quickly build it and go to book application, and let's just start the application. Okay, this will start the application for us. It is running already. So as you can see here, it is started and it should be started on port 8080, right? Now let me bring up the postman. Let's add the URL, and what we need is we need body as well, right? So raw body we will say, and we will just add a JSON. So let me create a JSON quickly. So the JSON will be mapped to this book entity, right? ID we don't need to give it. We need title, author, and genre, right? So here, as you can see, I have added a JSON which we want to send. So basically, title, author, and genre I have added. So if you see the book class, we have title, author, and genre, right? Now I have added a Harry Potter book. So let's try to hit this API and let's see what happens. The moment I hit it, so we got the response. So for ID1, we have created this book inside our DB, right? So let's actually go inside DB and let's see what data is actually added. Let me go to browser and let me try to load H2 database. So here is a URL for H2 console, but it is giving me white label error because we need to add some configuration. So here we need to add these three configurations in application properties file. First one is H2 console enable true, so that we can see the console of H2 database, and username and password for that DB so that we can log in inside the H2 console, right? Now we'll need to rerun this application in order to reflect this configuration. So let's run it again. Our application is up. Now we will need to send or save this book again because H2 is a temporary DB. Once you restart your application, all the data will be vanished, right? So let's send it again. So see, we got one as ID again. Let's try to reload this now. You can see we have this H2 console, and let's try to connect. This JDBC URL perhaps is wrong. So where do we find it? In the console, if you see, there is this JDBC URL, right? So this is the URL on which you need to log in. Let me replace this URL and try again. So there we go, we are able to log in, and if you can see, there is a book table here. If I click on it, there is a select query, it is running. The moment I say run, it will show us the details in the database. So as you can see, we have our details added. Let's try to add one more. So here we will just say Harry Potter part 2 and let's send it again. So see, here we got the respective response, and let's run this query again. So Harry Potter 2 again is added, right? So that is add for us. So create we have covered so far. Now let's see read. So let's see how we can read, right? So let's add another API to read. Let's go back to our application. Let's go to book controller, and here we will create a new method. Let's say public. Again we will say response entity of book, because we are going to return book only. We'll say get book, right? Get book by name, probably because we are going to search with name, right? And we are going to pass request parameter which will be name, and let's add a get mapping here. Let's say get mapping, and here we will say get book name over here, or let's say book name. We will assign that book name over here so that the mapping will be there. For that, what we need is we need to add a method inside service, and we will just pass this name over here. Let's try to implement this. Create method at book service. There we go. This will return a book entity as well. And here what we will do, we will just say book repository dot find. So here if you see, by default we have find by ID method, but find by name method we do not actually have here. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our repository, and we will just need to create find by name over here. So let's see how we can create it. So let's add a public method, public book. We will just say find book by title, and that's it. This will write internal query for us. We just need to add this function and our job is done. Okay, and it will fetch the book by title, right? Now we can make use of this function here. So find book by title, and we will pass the title name over here. Let's see what this is returning us. This will return us the book, right? Now we will just return this instead of assigning it, right? So that's it. Now let's go back to controller, and let's assign it to a variable book by name for now, and let's return it, right? So that's it. This will do the job for us. Now let's rerun our application and let's see what is happening. Our application is up now. Let's go back to our postman and let's add one more book because the database won't have any book. And let me reload it. Now as we can see, there is one book. Let's add another. Let's send it. If you can see, there are two books now, right? Now I will do plus, copy this, paste it over here. Now this is going to be a get request. What was our exact API? Let's go back and check. Get book, and book name we need to pass. What is our book name in this case? Harry Potter. Go and put it here, Harry Potter, right? And get mapping. Hit it. It says bad request. Let's see what is the problem. Right, so we are getting this issue because we have added a request parameter. Rather, it should be a path variable because we are passing it inside the path, right? So now let's rerun our application and let's see. There we go. So let's add a book. So Harry Potter is added and let's try to fetch it. There we go. So our get API is also working and returning us a result. Now let's try adding another book. Let's say so we'll add Harry Potter part 2, let's say, and here we will give Harry Potter part 2. Let's send it. Same results we got, right? So our get API is also working, right? So let's go back to our agenda. So by now we have covered create and read operations. Now we will cover update and delete, right? So let's go ahead with update first. So let's go back to our IntelliJ and let's add one more API here. So what I will do, I'll copy and paste it, and we will modify this as a put mapping. We'll say update book, right? And I will modify this function name as well, update book, and we'll take a book, and what we'll do, we'll add a new method inside service layer, say update book as well, and let's create that. Now let's say book repository dot update. Now there is no inbuilt update method, right? So what we can do here is we can explicitly add update method, as we have added find book by title, right? We can add a similar another method to update, or rather we can use save method as well. So what save method will do, if the data is already present with the given ID inside your database, it will update the content, otherwise it will add it, okay? So it's basically add or update. But using this will create a problem. What problem it will create? So if we go inside book entity, we have added a generated value for ID, right? So it is auto incrementing. So we are not giving it explicitly. Let's actually bring up this application and let's see what problem it is creating. Before that, let me just see if everything is okay here. So we have updated this function and we are returning the saved book. Instead of saying saved, let's say updated book, right? Now let's bring up the application and let's see what is the error over here. Okay, I'm not returning, so let's return this, right? So that is fine. Now let's bring up the application and let's see what error we are getting here. So our application is up now. So let's try to add a book. So here I have added it, created a book with one ID, and if we try to get it with the same name, we are getting that book, no problem. And I have created this update API here as well. Now let's change the name a bit, probably let's say Harry Potter's, and let's try to send it. Now let's see what is the problem I was talking about. So as you can see, it is saving in database, but it is saving a new entry. It is not updating same one, okay? Because we have given a generated value. So if we go into our database and let me just try to refresh this, let's get the data from book table. As you can see, there are two entries. So it's not updating, rather adding, okay? So that is happening because we have generated value. So what we need to do is, so now let's do one thing. Now let's try to pass the ID here as well, okay? So let's say first one I need to update, and I say let's update the title. Let's update the title a bit. So Harry Potter part 3, let's say now, and let's send it. So as you can see, now it has updated. So let's go to DB and check. So if I go and run this query, so as you can see, now it is updating fine. So the solution to that problem is you need to explicitly pass the ID. As save, you cannot send the request without ID, rather you need to pass the ID, okay? Once you pass the ID, you will be able to update it fine, right? So this is update API for us. This is also working fine. Now let's try to read it. So let Harry Potter part 3, right? So as you can see, we are getting the expected data, no problem, right? Now one more thing we will try. Let's try to update second book that we had, and let's say part 2, and let's also update author a bit. We will just say JKR and let's try to send it. Now see, the data is updated. Let's go into DB and check. So here if you can see the author and this title also is updated. So update is also working fine. The only thing you need to remember is you need to pass the ID in order to make use of save method, because save method will update if the ID is already present, because that's a primary key, right? The moment we say @ID here, that will make this as a primary key. With the primary key, our save method will check if it is already present, and it will just update it if it is already present. Otherwise it will save it, right? So that is update API for us. Now next one is our delete API. Now let's go ahead to our controller and let's try to add one more API. Now here we will say delete mapping, right? Now let's try to delete it by ID. Now we will say delete book and we will get the book ID over here. Here also we will say ID. What was our ID? Our ID was integer. Change the name to delete book, right? So that we have. Now let's add a new function to delete book, right? Now let's implement this. Now we have a method created. Let's say book repository dot delete by ID, and let's pass this ID over here. Delete by ID won't return anything, so it will return void. So let's return void only from here, and we will just return response entity dot ok dot build, right? So there we go. Now let's try to bring up our application again and let's see what happens. So there we go, our application is up. Now let's try to add one entry or a couple of entries we'll try to add. So Harry Potter we have added, Harry Potter part 2 also we will add. Let's go into our database. Let me refresh this and let's see what we have inside our book table. So we have 2 entries, right? Now let me just duplicate this tab and let's see. Let's update it as delete book, and what I will pass the book ID. So what book ID we have? We have 1 or 2, let's say. The second one we'll try to delete, and we will say delete mapping, right? Let me just send it. See, we are not getting any response because we are returning only HTTP OK. Now let me try to see what happens. So as you can see, the data is deleted. Data with ID 2 is deleted as we are passing 2. And if I pass 1 and send it again, and let's go back to DB and let's check. So everything is deleted, right? Let's try to add one entry. So it will be added as 3, and it will be an incremented number, the generated value. Let's run it. We'll be able to see the entry over here. So that's how we can add delete API as well, right? So there we go. We have added all 4 APIs. Add book is basically create, get book, which is basically read, update, and delete. All 4 we have added. So as you can see, H2 database we have used JPA, we have tested it by using Postman, we have implemented all 4 of this. So that is how you can make use of Spring Boot and implement your CRUD service. So Spring Boot framework is very easy to use, as we have seen, and you can create any REST API by using this Spring Boot service. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching it, and if you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe my channel, and see you in the next video.